Hi, welcome back to another episode of the Macintosh Librarian. I'm Miss Fox, your librarian, and this is our virtual pal, Maccy.
Doo-doo-doo. Hi, everybody. So what's scheduled for today's chat, Miss Fox? I seem to have forgotten.
Oh no, your hard drive's starting to fail, Maccy. Looks like we're just in time for today's topic, which is flash memory disk drive replacements for your 68K based classic Macintosh system.
My hard disk is just fine, Miss Fox. My hard disk is just fine, Miss Fox. What's going on again?
Well, we're talking about hard disk replacements, which I definitely think you need.
Maybe it is time for a tune-up. Ooh, that's what these things are. Upgrades for me.
That's right, Maccy. In front of you, you have the SCSI to SD adapter from Michael at codesource.com, as well as the Big Mess of Wires Floppy Emulator. We'll go over our experiences with them, their differences, and let you know which one you should buy first.
Oh boy, I'm getting an upgrade. So, how does all this work exactly?
Since you're new to all this, Maccy, let's go ahead and go over our first piece of hardware, the SCSI to SD adapter, and go over some of the basics. Here we have the SCSI to SD adapter from Michael at codesource.com.
Ooh.
This device is meant to replace a spinning platter-based SCSI hard disk with a modern-day flash memory-based SD card. The version that we have here is version 6, revision F, which has a micro USB connection, which can allow for easy file transfer from your virtual SCSI disk drive to a modern machine. The SCSI to SD adapter is a perfect solution for us modern-day archivists looking to replace aging and failed spinning platter drives with a simple SD card.
Ooh, all my hopes and dreams can fit on that little card.
The setup for the SCSI to SD adapter can be relatively simple if you're looking just to replace a failed hard drive. First, open up your Mac. Make sure you don't touch the CRT or discharge the CRT using the instructions from the linked video in the description. Make sure you have an SD card that's formatted to FAT32. Slide that into your adapter and open up your Mac. Be sure to back up all the files you want off the SCSI platter hard drive first before you remove it.
Be careful with that. This is delicate surgery on the old noggin.
You'll be fine, Maccy. This is a pretty straightforward install. Alright, next, connect the SCSI ribbon cable to the SCSI to SD adapter. You don't even have to connect the power, since the SCSI to SD adapter gets its power entirely from the ribbon cable. We went ahead and 3D printed an adapter that allows us to mount the SCSI to SD adapter where the hard drive normally sat in the Macintosh's chassis. This gives us a nice clean finish and prevents the adapter from rattling around when you move your Mac. I'll post a link to Thingiverse.com where you can download this model.
I don't want my hard drive rattling around while I'm out on the town.
Once you have your adapter installed, put everything back together and gather your operating system installation disks. Here we're going to install System 7.0.1 using our reprinted Macintosh install disks. One thing to note is to make sure you have a modified version of the HDSC drive setup application. This patched application will allow you to format non-Apple SCSI hard drives and use it as a primary hard disk. I am aware of some workarounds using firmware update utility for the SCSI to SD adapter, but this is the most basic solution. I'll include a link below in the show notes to where you can get this modified disk format utility.
This sounds pretty easy, Miss Fox.
Well, it is fairly simple, Maccy. Once you have the SCSI to SD adapter installed, your hardware will think that it's just another SCSI hard disk. From here, we can install macOS just like any other normal Mac.
But, am I just another Mac? Will it work on me?
It will work for you, Maccy, but you are no normal Mac. You're special to me, Maccy.
Oh, shucks. So, what's the deal with that USB port? What can I do with that?
That's right, Maccy. Thanks for reminding me. The main highlight of the latest revision of the SCSI to SD adapter is the inclusion of a micro USB port. This port can be connected to a Macintosh that can read and write the HFS formatted disks, such as an iMac or a G3 PowerBook. Essentially, this makes transferring programs to your classic Mac as easy as a drag and drop.
Wow! Neato Magneto!
Well, unfortunately, modern Macs and PCs can't write the HFS file system natively, and it can be a bit cumbersome if you're trying to work around this limitation. Here in the library, I installed VMware Fusion with a version of macOS 10 Leopard on a modern 2017 iMac, and I use this virtual machine to transfer files to and from our classic Macs using the USB port on the SCSI to SD adapter.
Wow, that does sound complicated. Now that you went through all that trouble, let's install some games. I hear SimCity is nice.
Well, another caveat, Mackie. Most software that's distributed for the Mac on various archival forums are typically in the disk image format.
What's wrong with that? I can mount disk images.
Well, it is possible to use a virtual disk image mounter on your Macintosh, but if the software spans multiple disks, you'll run into memory limitations when trying to mount all these images at once. I actually found myself using old floppy disks to transfer these multiple disk image applications over to my classic Macintosh.
So you're saying this isn't the easiest way to install SimCity, but it does seem like a good replacement for my clicking hard disk.
Well, it is a good replacement, and I would definitely recommend this to anyone that's looking to replace an old SCSI spinning hard disk. If you have the right equipment and patience, you can easily transfer applications and files to and from your classic Mac. Also, having solid-state memory allows you to easily back up your hard drive image to a modern Macintosh, and even run that image on an emulator. We talked about some of the shortcomings with the SCSI to SD card adapter when it comes to transferring files over from a modern machine. This brings us to our next drive replacement, the Big Mess of Wires Floppy Emulator.
Ooh, I like the sound of that. I love me some emulators.
The Big Mess of Wires Floppy Emulator allows the user to load up a FAT32 micro SD card with Macintosh floppy disk images from a modern machine. This emulator can then read and write these disk images and trick the Mac into thinking it's a real drive.
Whoa, that is cool!
The floppy emulator essentially works in two ways. Either through your Macintosh's floppy ribbon connection, replacing your internal floppy drive, or through your Mac's external port on the back of the machine.
Ooh, neat!
And this port exists on most all-in-one black and white Macs. We decided to use the external connection on the back of the machine, that way we can maintain the use of the floppy drive. The floppy emulator has different modes of emulation, depending on your use. You can mount 400K, 800K, and 1.44 megabyte floppy disk images, as well as hard disk images as large as 2 gigabytes. The simple LCD interface allows you to browse your FAT formatted SD cards for a disk image and simply click Mount. The floppy emulator then tricks the Macintosh to think that a disk has been inserted to your external drive.
Ooh.
And then you're good to install that game or application that you downloaded from a website, such as Macintosh Garden or Macintosh Repository.
Wow! So the emulator fools me into thinking it's a real disk. What a trickster. But I suppose it helps me install things from the internet.
It's definitely easy to install things from a disk image. To me, this is a more straightforward process to transfer applications to my Macintosh Classic. The disk images are downloaded from the web, such as a place like Macintosh Garden. They're unzipped and unstuffed if necessary. The disk images are then placed on your SD card, and you can even make folders to help you organize things. You just slide your SD card back into your floppy emulator, boot up your Mac, and mount your disk image. Of course, you have to be sure that your disk images are in the correct format. In this case, the floppy emulator needs it to be in the DSK or the disk copy 4.2 format.
Wait, what if an application takes up more than one disk? What are we gonna do?
Well, it's easy peasy, Mackie. First, you just eject the disk on your Macintosh, and then tricks the Mac to think that an actual disk has been ejected, and then you can just scroll to the next image on your floppy emulator and click Mount again.
Nice! So to all the boys and girls watching today, which one should they buy first?
Well, that is a good question, Mackie. Let's look at these two side by side.
As a hard drive replacement.
The SCSI to SD adapter can sit inside your Mac, replacing an aged SCSI drive. It's fast, reliable, and gives you up to 4 gigabytes of hard drive space on your classic Mac. The floppy emulator can emulate a hard disk too. However, I wouldn't recommend using it that way, Since if you use it as your main hard disk, you can't simultaneously use it for its main feature, which is to mount floppy disks. I would only use it as a primary booting disk if you're just trying to test other versions of macOS or trying to get a Mac to boot if that doesn't have a hard drive.
So the SCSI to SD adapter is probably the best way to go to replace a hard drive as a file transfer tool.
As a pure file transfer tool, the Floppy Emulator wins over the SCSI to SD adapter. The SCSI adapter does have a USB connection, which makes it easy to drag and drop files to and from your classic Mac.
That's neat.
But that's definitely not the SCSI adapter's strength. Where it falls short is that you have to have an OS with USB that can read and write to the HFS file format.
Neat.
The Floppy Emulator wins for allowing you to easily transfer files via the FAT32 formatted SD card, which any modern computer can read and write to.
There you have it. The Big Mess of Wires Floppy Emulator is the best file transfer tool. So how about the cost, Miss Fox?
So let's talk about cost. Today, the SCSI to SD adapter version 6 revision F costs about $100 from internalcomputing.com. This version of the hard disk emulator has a USB connection on the back and supports a faster transfer speed than the previous versions. The previous version of the emulator doesn't have the USB connection, but it's a more economical option, coming in at about $60.
Ooh, neat.
This will allow you to use a full-size SD card as a SCSI hard disk replacement, but you don't have the ease of transferring applications back and forth using a USB connection. The Big Mess of Wires Floppy Emulator Deluxe Bundle, which comes with the Floppy Emulator Model C, a beautiful frosted acrylic case, and a collection of vintage Apple software on a microSD card, as well as the SCSI extension ribbon cable, will set you back $140.
These two upgrades will get me all set for the future. Thank you, Miss Fox.
If you do need to replace a disk that's failed, remember that buying an old SCSI hard disk on eBay can be risky, since they're all old spinning disks.
That eBay guy can sure be sketchy sometimes.
A SCSI to SD adapter is a more permanent solution to replacing a hard drive, since an SD card is a much easier device to replace than an old platter drive that they don't make anymore. Of course, if your budget allows for it, and you're up for some serious classic Mac functionality, I would highly recommend getting both the SCSI to SD adapter and the Floppy Emulator. Version 5 of the SCSI emulator is more than capable if you need to spend that extra $40 on something else.
Now let's get to installing some games. I'm ready to be a benevolent overlord in SimCity.
Mackie, you're just going to wreak havoc on those poor virtual people. First, we need to replace your failing hard drive with an SD card using the SCSI to SD adapter.
Ooh, that's right. I forgot I was having issues. We better get to it. I can't replace my hard drive myself.
Well, we hope you found this video useful in deciding if you should get one of these new flash-based drive emulators. I know I sure love them. Well, that's all for today's video. Join us next time back in the library for more classic computing and classic Macintosh content.
Goodbye, boys and girls. See you next time. And I'll have some upgrades, too.
Mackie, where are you? Hey, what are you doing over there?
Oh.